That's my terrible machine gun noise. I now have a turret. Hey there, friends. Time for me to check in with you on the Fatman build. Clearly, I've built a stand for it. Very simple. It goes into one of the holes on the 3D print. Just like that. And now I can work on it without it flopping over. It's gotten big enough that it is quite unwieldy to work on. It's going to be super helpful for finishing and painting. But that's next week. Today I want to show you what we did this week. Obviously there's a lot more going on here. We've added many parts, specifically this big cage part up here. This is all made out of styrene, not foam, just because styrene is rigid and durable and it will hold its own weight. If I had really thin pieces of EVA foam up here, it'd just be a floppy mess. So these were all cut out on the laser. Obviously you could do it by hand, but it's one of those cases where I paid for that thing. I'm gonna get my money's worth out of it and not have to cut all these out by hand. So we did some laser cutting. However, the sort of all these holes and this panel over here, could have done that on the laser as well, but it's one of those cases where it was actually quicker to do it by hand. So all these holes going down the side of it there, those were done with just a sharpened metal tube. And it only took about 10 minutes to cut both of those out and then glue them in place. So that was super quick. More foam on there. This is all foam. We also added all kinds of tubes. I just want to be able to swing it around like that. We had tubes over here. We got tubes over here. We have tubes up there. Tubes everywhere. It's all just EVA foam dowels hot glued into place, and those worked great. This part over here is a little greeble that I believe I got from my buddy Will Morgan when he was working out of my shop, and I've been saving it all these years because it's the perfect thing to put right there. Another little resin part there that I glued in, and then lots of little attachments and interesting bits like these little screw heads. I think I have one here, yeah. So these are actually cast out of hot glue, and partially because we figured a hot glue company is sponsoring the video, so we should see if we can cast some things out of hot glue. But it's also a really good technique. If you want to cast something quickly, maybe you're all out of urethane resin, you just dump some hot glue in there and you get a fairly decent casting out of it. The other cool thing is these are convention safe. It's kind of rubbery hot glue, so it's nice and safe. Of course, thank you for the suggestions. The last video we talked about casting pieces out of hot glue, and we took that advice into consideration and got some pretty decent little castings out of here. The main thing is that you want to melt the hot glue in a large container to get a big sort of vat of very hot glue so it stays hot longer, as opposed to trying to use the hot glue gun to force hot glue down into the mold. Of course, your results may vary, but we made a ladle and poured it in, and that seemed to work pretty well, although it was quite messy, and I did get a tiny little burn on my finger. So if you're gonna do that, definitely be careful. Wear gloves on both hands. Yeah. Along the bottom here, there's a couple of parts meant to be a handle, I guess, and maybe this is meant to be a stop for your shoulder down here. Those are made out of Sintra, just a foam PVC plastic, and really easy to heat bend. So these guys here, I just heated them with the heat gun, bent them into shape and glued them on. These are not load bearing. They would snap off in an instant if you use them to hold the whole thing. They're really just there for decoration. Everything's meant to be on the handles down here while you're holding it. Another part we haven't put on yet, and we won't do until we started painting, is this gauge. The gauge on the Fatman there. And I have one from an old air compressor, and it's almost perfect. I already took it apart. The whole thing comes apart, which is really neat. I'll probably lop this part off and use these screws as the place where I mount these. Whoops, get back here. But I do need to take it apart, not just for fun, but because Brittany printed out these graphics here that we can use to replace what's in there. Inside here, inside this fella is the mechanism for determining the pressure. And it looks like the air comes in here to this sealed off, but I'm guessing hollow part. And as that expands like that, it causes the needle to go up like that. Pretty cool. But there's this really neat little mechanism in there. that I'm totally not going to use. Probably going to lop that off and then use those 2 screw heads to attach this to something that attaches it to the launcher. Another interesting part that will be one of the last bits is this knob here, just on the back of it. And I 3D modeled and printed mine super quick in Fusion. What's interesting though is it's very similar to the Fusion core, or is that what these are called? The ammo for laser guns. Yeah, my guess is in the game that these assets were reused, or they just took the top of this, lopped it off and said, hey, that looks like a knob. We'll stick it on the back of the nuke launcher. And that'll wrap it up for the fabrication. It is time to do some finishing. Like I said, we're gonna do that next week, but I'm thinking for sealing, we're gonna go with Mod Podge. Just about everything here. What's great about Mod Podge is we can add some nice texture on purpose. We want this thing to be gritty and grimy and kind of textured. So I'm gonna cover everything in a couple good layers of Mod Podge. That's how I'll be sealing it, and then probably just acrylic paints to paint it, and then some rust, which is gonna be really fun. I can't wait to get to it, and I can't wait to share it with you. I think this is gonna be the last week on this build, and it should be all done really soon. We'll have a video out for you guys. It's been a while, but I'm very excited to get this video out the door. That'll do it for this week. Thanks for hanging out with me in the shop, and of course, as always, thank you for the support. It's been really interesting for us this last month, taking a month off from making any videos, or I should say from publishing a video every single week. We have been working obviously very hard on this, but it's been a little bit different and weird for us. And it's been great sharing the progress on this project with you guys every week and getting some great feedback. So thank you again. Keep that up. And guess I'll see you next week.